I think we'll get started. And first, we appreciate people coming out tonight to this public budget consultation. The process that Council's been going through over the last number of months is a process, and this is one more step in that for us to build this financial plan, the budget, and moving us forward for May 2nd or May 1st when we have to have the budget approved. So I don't know if I need to introduce your city council, but these are our elected folks, and our staff are here as well tonight to help us answer any of those specific questions that get into some detail that require their support. So with that, I want to start the evening. We really want to go through a bit of some information. We'll spend 10 or 15 minutes walking through the budget process, the implications of the budget, what we've done, and how we've got to where we are this evening to present that material and information to you. It really is a process that we go through, and I can honestly say that after the election on October 20th, Council was sworn in, and probably within 2 or 3 weeks, we began the process of building the financial plan, the budget, and the discussions for our budget with this Council. And so from there, we begin that preparation stage, and it really is about money coming in, money going out, and how we effectively deliver the services to and on behalf of the community. And then today we really are going to explain where we're at today and how we've delivered that. So we approve, first of all, a schedule and some budget assumptions, and that really gives our administration the starting point for us in terms of some of the assumptions we want to build within the budget, and we'll talk about some of those assumptions this evening for you. We provide a list of initiatives and projects that we need to have undertaken as part of the budget. Staff then go away and start to do some work based around those assumptions for Council as a starting point for us to build that financial plan. And from there, we really start to gather the views of both Council and put the initiatives together, and also from our public. We need to, as part of the budget, we also need to build a 5-year financial plan, and that's presented in conjunction with the annual budget. And then the financial plan or bylaw that's finally locked upon has to be done by legislation, has to be passed by the 1st of May. So all of this that we've been going on over the last 2 or 3 or 4 months gets us to a place where we get the financial plan in place, we get the capital plan, the operating budget, our 5-year plan. We've given the first 2 readings of that. It needs 4 readings for it to be passed, and that will happen in May. So there were some things that in preparation for the budget that we really had to be included in our budget for this year. The new employer health tax was about 2%, which was about $300,000 to our budget. Each year, we face those same inflationary pressures and rising costs that any home, any business faces when you're dealing with your finances of your home or business. You have increased costs of insurance and fuel, and all of those things that are impacting you impact us, and those inflationary pressures are built into, or have to be built into our budget, and you either find more money for them or you reduce the costs of them. Peace River Agreement, and I'll talk about this in some detail a little bit later on, but really the allocation of our Peace River Agreement funding that we received from the province. The original draft of our budget for 2019 had 24% in order to get to a balanced budget. 24% of that Peace River Agreement money, 15 million of it that we received was going to capital, 15% going to debt servicing, and 61% to operating. And as I say, I really want to get into some detail, and I will, explaining that because it really is a critical component of our budget. And as we build this strong financial future for our community, that Peace River Agreement is a critical component of it. And the allocation towards capital and operating is a significant piece of that. We've completed many kind of significant projects that have really depleted reserves, the water, sewer. We built some major infrastructure. Those have impacted the reserves that we built up over the years, ensuring we have solid infrastructure for those. But those also then require you to have a review of the rates that you charge for in your utilities to ensure those utilities are self-funding, self-liquidating, self-sufficient on their own. As it relates to our ability to deliver our capital programs and projects. So this really is the first stage in terms of the money that comes into us as a city for our budget, and it comes in from 3 or 4 major really areas. And people always make the assumption, I think, that the budget is driven by taxes, the tax revenues that we collect from businesses, residents, and property owners. And it's, as you can see, 27% of our total budget comes from residential, commercial, business taxation, property taxation. 15 million, 24% comes from the Peace River Agreement. That's how important that agreement is to us as a community and a region. Fees and charges, another 13 or 14 million. Probably the big chunk of that 13 or 14 million is our water and sewer utility. Water and sewer is about 11 million of that 13 million. Then we have the collections from other government, our Peace River Regional District collection that we collect, the school taxes, hospital taxes, another 10 million. That's a straight in and out. The money comes in and it goes straight back out. About 5 million comes from other sources into the city for the gas tax. We get the gaming revenue, a share of the gaming, traffic fine revenue. So we get other sources of revenue as well. And that's about 8% of our budget. And then in 2019, we have a reserve built in for a carry forward of some of our projects that we have on the books, and that's about $3 million. So in essence, we have $65 million, approximately $64,756,000, and total money coming in. And this just breaks down where that money comes in from. Our assessment is what drives the property taxation from residents and business. And this slide just breaks down the various classes of assessment that exist by legislation. Every community is basically the same. You have residential, you have utilities, you have major and light industry, you have commercial, recreation, nonprofit, and farm. And so 51 or 52% of our property taxes are collected from residential assessment. I think another 40 or 42% comes from commercial and business. 3% comes from major industry. We only have 4 major industry assessments in the city of Dawson Creek, LP, AltaGas, Ferris, Air Liquide. Those are considered major industries. So the amount of major industry that we have within our community is very minimal in relation to the overall property taxation that we collect. We are very heavily dependent on residential and commercial business assessment, property assessment for our taxation. Again, that's why the Peace River Agreement is such an important component of our budget. So this year, the assessed value has gone up in residential slightly. We saw a slight increase in residential assessment, 1.2 billion, 1.219 billion to 1.231 billion. And commercial went up 459 million to 464 million. So those are probably the 2 most important segments of assessment for us. And Dawson Creek's been very, very stable over the years in terms of our assessment as it relates to industry or residential as well as commercial. We haven't faced the big ups or downs in value of assessment. like some communities have. You see the residential assessment will spike, climb, and then it will drop. Ours has remained very, very stable, 1 or 2% increase over the last 10 or 15 years. And the same was commercial. And so you get some new assessment comes in, but the majority of it's driven by just that really stable marketplace that we have. And then again, like I say, we saw a slight increase in major industry and light industry, but they make up such a small segment of the overall assessment, they don't have as big an impact on it. This slide then shows how much the property taxes are generated from that assessment. So the residential assessment in 2018 generated $6.691 million in property taxation. In 2019, it would be $6,926,000. So there's a change in the assessed value of about $66,000. That's new assessment that comes in, generates some additional new revenue, new construction. And then the change in the mill rate by adding and increasing the mill rate will add another $169,000 for a total tax increase. If everything stayed the same, comparative would be $235,000 on residential. So this just shows the comparative of 18 in terms of what we had in 2000 property taxation and what it would be in 2019. These are some of the things that we need to then, as we deliver and understand what the demands on services will be, the inflationary pressures, what our capital budget will be. This is everything that we do is going to be based around here because that's where we drive the income. Everything else is stable from the perspective of Peace River Agreement and fees and charges, et cetera. So by increasing so the council now has taken all that information and in order to balance it, we've made a 2.5% increase in the mill rate for across the board, residential, business, light industry. And so that mill rate change or increase this year will generate a change for 1,600 properties will pay less in taxes this year. 2,400 properties will see an increase of less than $100. 320 properties would see an increase of $100 to $300. 267 properties would see an increase of $300 to $1,000, and 38 properties would see an increase over $1,000. Now, the one thing that's the proviso in there is if somebody built a new home, and that's a new property that wouldn't show, so that would be a property that would be an increase over $1,000 because it didn't exist in the previous year. So this just gives us shows where the assessment increases will be and by how it will impact them. This year's slide is really what's I really want to spend some time on because it's the information around our Peace River Agreement, the Fair Share Agreement. Fair Share Agreement's been around for a number of years, for probably up to 20 years now, and started out as a revenue sharing agreement by the province of British Columbia to help municipalities in Northeast BC pay for infrastructure in their communities because they didn't want us taxing the industry outside of our communities. And so over the years, it's morphed into a very significant bit of revenue for all of us in northeastern British Columbia. It was renegotiated in 2005. There's a complex formula that's attached to the agreement that is based on population. It's based on assessments within your community. And it's based on the infrastructure that's built out in our region that drives that revenue to the province of British Columbia. So it was due to expire in 2020. There was a commitment by the provincial government that they would renew it in 2020. And it was very important for us to get that agreement renewed. Today, about 35% or 37% of the Peace River Agreement is going towards capital 15% is going towards debt repayment, and 60% is going towards our operating budget. So at $15 million, approximately $7 or $8 or $9 million is going into the operating budget of the city. And so when we met in November as council, we had our strategic planning exercise and the visioning of the future of our community. It really is imperative. Two things were imperative. One, that we get the agreement renewed, which we did 3 years ago in the last term. And now this council, we've set the direction that we need to transition the dependency of that fair share agreement, that revenue, off of our operating budget onto capital. If the fair share agreement ever came to an end where the province said we're no longer going to extend and we're going to end that agreement, it would mean we would have to find $6 or $7 million in additional operating money into our budget. That's paying for facility services that we currently provide today. We would have to increase the taxes by 50, 60, or 70% in order to generate another $5 million or $6 million or $7 million that we currently have going into from the Peace River Agreement into our operating budget. And so council have taken that really foundational perspective of the direction we take and say, we need to ensure we have a strategy in place to move the dependency off of the Peace River Agreement in our operating budget and get it back into, or move it into capital. And so this slide shows the history of the Peace River Agreement over the last 10 years. And so I want to say that this isn't looking backwards and saying that for us that we say somebody did something that shouldn't have happened. We've built an amazing community with amazing facilities and infrastructure. We have great facilities, a new pool, a new event center, a new riding arena, the Calvin Crook Center. We have great arenas. We have a great curling rink. We have the Performing Arts Center, on and on and on. We have great facilities that give us a great quality of life, but they're very expensive to operate. And the pressures of having to operate them have now morphed us into utilizing the Peace River Agreement for those operating expenses. And the pressures on our taxpayers are not sustainable in the long term to continue to fund them without doing something significant to that and moving that money off of there. So you can see back in 2010, we got $9.8 million in Peace River Agreement funding. 1.5 million went to capital, 2.6 went to debt servicing, and we look at that as a piece of the funding of the Peace River Agreement goes to debt servicing, which is a capital program that you use to build capital or to build infrastructure as a capital program. So 2.6 million went to debt servicing, and then 5.6 million went to operating. And so over the years, you can see we've went from 55% in operating to this year at 48%. It really, I can't stress this enough, it is the direction over the next, and we built the 2019 plan, the financial plan. And the next step for council will be that long-term plan in terms of setting out that long-term objective for us in terms of how do we ensure that we move this dependency of Peace River Agreement money off of operating onto capital. And that's the work that will be underway for us in the coming months and year to build that financial plan. We need to do this. The current agreement now was renewed in 2020. It's renewed at $50 million a year. It'll have a 2% indexing clause attached to it starting in 2020. It'll expire in 2035. We need to ensure that we have this plan in place to ensure that we have the stability of this community self-sustaining itself and not reliant on the Peace River Agreement money for operating because it's at the stroke of a pen that it could leave us. And we need to be focused around that, and that's the strategy, the number one strategic priority that council have set for this upcoming term. So we also collect, as part of our budget as well, there's fees and charges. I mentioned the water and sewer a bit ago. So there's $6 million come into the city in water revenue, $4 million from sewer, 1.1 in revenue for our recreation. So the arenas, the pools, any of those recreational facilities where somebody pays a fee to attend. A total of about 1 million comes into us in revenue there. $1 million in waste services. $400,000 for air transportation revenue, and then on for a total of about $13 million in fees and charges. But again, the majority of that is made up of that water and sewer. So where does the money go to for us in providing the services on behalf of our community? Protective services is $9.1 million. Recreation, arts and culture is $8.4 million. Transportation services, $6.6 million. I'll give you some breakdown on this in following slides. General administration services, $4.3. Debt servicing this year is $3.8 million. And debt servicing is combined with both general debt as well as our water and sewer debt. They're broken down separately, but they are a total debt servicing this year of $3.8 million. Water services, $3.7 million. Environmental, $1.5. Sewer, $1.5. Environmental waste services is $1.2. And so basically that's kind of a high level breakdown of the services we provide on behalf of the community. Break out into about $40 million. We have about $8 million in capital projects for this year, in the current year. And then we've got about $3 million in projects that are carried forward from last year or years before that just didn't get completed, but are still funded. And then the other money we collect on behalf of the province for school or PRRD, hospital taxes, that's just a straight in and out for us. So protective services, we have 4 or 5 areas within our budget, that $9.1 million in protective services. 4.8 is for our RCMP contract. 3.5 is for our fire department. $200,000 in safety. $194,000 in our bylaw enforcement. $189,000 in building inspection. And $186,000 in animal control. And the animal control is the contract we have with the SPCA, where we give them, I think, $180,000 or $185,000 a year, and they look after the animal control bylaw on behalf of the city of Dawson Creek under contract. Recreation services are broken down to $8.4 million in recreation services for our community. $1.9 million for the Ken Boric Aquatic Center, $1.6 for the Encana Event Center, $1.1 million for the Memorial Arena. And these are pure expenditures. The fees and charges, we collect some revenue back. And I'll talk a little bit about a couple of them in here. This is just a high level kind of expenditure. Recreation programs that we operate within the city are $970,000. Parks and playgrounds, another $790. Public library is a net of $536. The multiplex, the operation of the multiplex is $380. Community services, $350,000. The Calvin Crook Center is $200,000. There was community grants and fees for services, $130. The Lakota Center, $100,000. The exhibition grounds for $100. So it's a total of $8.4 million. We have $585,000 back in the Ken Boric Aquatic Center in fees and charges. $442 from the Memorial Arena, and $80 and $29 for others. So about $1.1 million. The net then to the city, to city taxpayers, and the delivery of programs is $7.2 million. Our transportation services broke down into a couple of areas here, and public works at $4.5 million. And this is really the work that the city does in our community and public works, both in our road maintenance and snow removal, et cetera, all of the public works that goes on within our community at $4.5 million. Airport gross is $1.2 million. And then the contract for transit is $800,000. There's some stuff in there in terms of the contract itself for BC Transit. We also look after the bus shelters and the maintenance around those bus shelters and snow removal and things. So, but basically it's $700,000 in net after our fees and charges for transit, and the airport nets out at about $800,000 after we collect about $415,000 a year in fees and charges for landing fees and all the other things that are associated with the revenue collected at the airport. General admin, the 4.3 million. We have 1.3 million in administration, finance, all of the operations of the city, the billing, the collections, all of the work that goes on within the city is about $1 million. Our IT costs are about $900,000. Other general services at 700, legislative services at 350 for a total of 4.3 million. Our water and sewer utility, I just want to explain a little bit about them before I get into the slides. The water and sewer utilities are self-funding, self-operating utilities that must operate on their own. So whatever it costs you to deliver the services of water and sewer on behalf of your community, both the operating costs as well as the capital costs have to be recovered through the fees and charges that you charge to the residents and businesses for that service. You can't borrow money outside of that through your general, and you can't fund it from other sources for the operations of your water and sewer utility. That's legislated for the operation of any city under your community charter. The water and sewer utility have to be self-funding, and the reason for that is because it's core that you need to make sure that and ensure that you have the ability to deliver water and sewer services on behalf of your community. You couldn't have it reliant on some other funding source and have it fail. And so it absolutely is self-funding. It has to look after itself. Anything that it costs us to deliver and build infrastructure or deliver the services, the fees that we charge for water and sewer have to meet that demand that's placed on you by the cost of services. So the water utility fees, operating expenditures are 3.7 million. The capital projects are 1.1 million. Debt servicing for any of the projects that we built in the past and we borrow for under that utility, then are paid for through the utility, through the water rates is 1 million. The equipment pool, so any equipment, the city operates an equipment pool. So if we have a vehicle that we know is going to need to be replaced in 10 years, we allocate a certain amount of money every year into that equipment pool for the replacement of that vehicle. We put it into a reserve account. And so the equipment pool has $89,000 in it for any of the equipment that may be replaced within the water utility. And then savings to water account funds of $52,000. So the total water utility fees of $6 million is broken down into those 4 or 5 categories. And the sewer utility is exactly the same. It operates on its own. It has to. And so it's broken down. The sewer operating expenditures are usually based on a proportion or a portion of your overall water utility usage. And so sewer operating expenditures this year would be 1.5 million. Savings to accrue funds and reserves at 1.5 million. Debt servicing at 540,000. We built a new sewer trunk line in 2014 or 15 in there sometime, 16. The sewer trunk line, the bypass that went along the railway tracks from 13th Street out to John Deere and across was about an $8 million project. So that has to be that debt has to be paid for out of the sewer utility, and the equipment pool of $99,000. The one unique thing about our sewer utility is that we have the reclaimed water facility, and so because it's a sewer utility that's feeding into that, any revenues that we get over and above the operations of the reclaimed water facility, any reclaimed water we sell comes back into this sewer utility, and so eventually that will be a very beneficial revenue source for us in coming years. This is the debt servicing. We hear a lot about the city's debt sometimes, and so I really wanted to make sure we included this. In 2017, the debt servicing, total debt servicing, principal and interest in 2017 was $4.2 million. That's combined general debt as well as water and sewer debt. That's the total. In 2020 or 2019, this year, it'll be down to 3.8 million. In 2023, it'll be down to 3.2 million. By the time we get to 2030, in about 11 or 12 years, The Encana Event Center debt will be retired in about 26 or 27. We have a couple of other major ones that will fall off. So our total debt servicing it stays pretty constant now for about 4 or 5 years, or 3 to 4 years. And then it starts to drop off pretty significantly. And we'll see a real significant drop in the 5 to 10 years. And so that puts us in a very solid position in terms of being able to move then that debt servicing that you're currently providing under your operating budget from taxes to service the debt, gives you the ability then to free up some of that debt servicing funds that currently are going in there. In 2030, that amount drops down to, and so I'm saying this, if we didn't borrow any further funds, you stayed where it is today, your debt servicing is under $1 million in 2030. So you really have some significance in terms of dropping off major debt within the next 5 to 10 years that are very beneficial. And you can see it in the graph where in 2027, total debt servicing, both water, sewer, and our general debt will be about 2.1 million. And so that's a very positive for us in our financial planning. 2019 capital projects, and so the real bones of what we do is always ensuring that we build strong capital programs and projects to ensure that the city stays in a very solid position with respect to roads and sidewalks and facilities and water and sewer. And so the capital program is really important, and we hear that a lot, feedback from residents about the deterioration of the roads and sidewalks and things like that. And you want to make sure that you stay on top of them. The more you let them deteriorate, the worse they get, then the more expensive they become, because now it's not just pavement, but now you're dealing with roadbed and all of the other, it becomes that much more expensive. So, in 2019, our capital projects are made up of 4.6 million in paving. We got about $1 million in facilities. We got 600,000 in sidewalks. We got about $65,000 in airport. We have 1.4 in water, 400 in sewer, and then we, again, as I said earlier, we allocate funding back into our equipment pool for a total of 8.6 million. And some of these are carry forward. As I say, we've got a number of projects that either didn't get completed or still funded within our reserve within there. So this just gives you a little bit of an indication of the high-level overview of our capital projects. And so the allocation of capital projects for the future are really 5.7 million of our capital program are coming from the Peace River Agreement funding. We get 15, 5.7 is going into capital, 3.8, 2.8 is going into debt servicing, the rest into operating. We got about 3 million in carry forward reserves. So we got about 1.4, 1.5 in the airport runway extension project, and some other projects in there that are in reserves. We got about 1.1 from our water infrastructure charges. The grant for gas tax will add about $500,000 into the funding. Equipment pool will be $550,000. Sewer infrastructure will add $400,000, and then development cost charges will add about $300,000 for about $11 million of the capital program. And so that's how the funding comes into us as we build our capital programs and projects. And so from there, that really does conclude what I wanted to do. Tonight was really about giving the community a bit of an overview of the budget process, what we're doing, where the money's coming from, where it's going, and then to be able to open it up to our community. It's about, we're delivering, we're here, we're elected to represent our community, you, our residents, to deliver the services that our community values. And the public engagement process is such an important piece of that to us as we guide this process of fiscal future and how we build the budget and the taxes that are going to help to provide and support that in the long term. And so tonight it's about that. Is really council, we set the town hall meetings, the public meetings, as an important part of this process. We will start the further budget deliberations following this. And so we really are appreciative of folks giving their time tonight to come out. From there, I'm going to sit down, and we got all of council here, our staff here, and are here to answer your questions that you have in regards to any aspect of the budget. And so I know there's 2 or 3 ones that have really been very, very focused out in our community, and we really welcome you. We are recording this. I think the CJDC are here, and we'll have it on our website. So if you come to the mic, if you could just introduce yourself, just for the benefit of those that are going to be listening along. So thank you.
No question is a dumb question, right? My name is Monica Dobrowolski. I have lived here for most of my life. I heard your budget, and I'd like to know how much is the fair trade money that we receive.
15 million this year.
15 million. But you made the budget not counting that money, right?
No, that money is built into the budget.
It's built into the budget? How is it built into the budget?
So there's 5.7 million going into capital, 2.8 million going into debt servicing, and the rest is going into the operating budget to pay for all of the services, protective services, recreation, arts, culture, the entire $60 million budget.
Yeah, I'd like to understand that a little bit better, because the way it was that I understood is that budget was made with what if we don't get this money in the future.
So my point about that is...
like, what if? Yeah. It's not the reality. It's like, can we count on that money? Or are we creating a crisis and laying off Lloyd and laying off other people in our community? Are we creating this crisis, or do you have the money to pay for them?
So the direction that council have taken is that we need to move the dependency of the Peace River Agreement money that we currently receive, that's at the will of the provincial government. It is in agreement. They have signed it. It is in place till 2035. But our council has said that we need to move the dependency of that money off of our operating budget. There is probably 7 million or 8 million going into the operating budget from Peace River Agreement money in order for us to balance the budget. So that money is going into the operating budget that we currently have. And council have said, if we don't move the dependency off of that, we're going to be, somebody in the future is going to have to make a very difficult decision if we ever lost the fair share of the Peace River Agreement.
So what if? Yes. What I want to know is, do we have the money to maintain these people employed right now? Do we have the money to support the arts? Like, I see this beautiful building is a tribute to the artists that we bring here. How much of that money stays here with us to promote the arts of our community? I have a hard time understanding, like when I was looking at the numbers.
Sure.
Do you understand? It's like we are building the Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal, is that the name of that palace? To a dead person? Because if we are going to kill the arts in our community, it just doesn't make sense why we build this. So in one way, I'd like to understand this better. So if you people can help me to ask questions that I'm not being able to ask properly, is to build a budget in what if. I need to know, is what if, or do we have the money?
So we do have the money, but where we're using it is from the Peace River Agreement money that is at the will of the government. It's at the stroke of a pen that it eventually will, I believe, will leave us. It's in place till 2035.
To believe for me is I have lived this experience. Yeah. But when I'm speculating about the future is what if.
So your council has made this as their number one.
Yeah, I am asking all of you, okay? Are we creating a crisis in our community?
Maybe, if I could, I'll maybe try and answer the question as you've put it, as the mayor said. So and I'm going to use round numbers. We get $15 million. You hear the word Peace River Agreement, fair share is what it started out as in 1993. So we get that money. We don't put it aside. We don't save it for a rainy day. We spend it. The original intent of the money was for capital projects. A number of years ago, the government said, look, we're going to give you some flexibility as a municipality. You can put some into your operations if you so wish, but the original intent is for capital, for roads, for your capital investments. Over the years, as you've seen, right as of today, I will give you round numbers again. Out of the $15 million that should be designated towards capital investment, $10 million of that is in the operating side of the budget. Quite a scary amount of money. Not sustainable that way. So what we're trying to do is take the $10 million and take a good portion of that back to the capital side so that we can do more road work. We can do more initial work for the people of the city because everybody wants everything. And I'm one of them. I've lived here all my life too, and we have a great city. But you can't continue to use fair share money in your operating side of your budget. Eventually, and you've seen the number breakdown, very close, 17 million collected in taxes, 15 million from the Peace River Agreement or Fair Share Agreement. And whether we like it or not, you have to look at the ifs when you're dealing with provincial government transfers because they can be here tomorrow and gone the next day. Whether we like that or not, it can happen. If we were ever to maintain the reliance in our operational side of the budget with the fair share revenue or Peace River Agreement revenue, and we lost it, we would look at 100% tax increase. And the people I talk to in this community talk about the tax rates being relatively on the high side today. So that's all. The whole issue is this is not newfound money or money that's over here. We're trying to shift.
I understand your philosophy. That's your philosophy. But I still think that, does this place here pays for itself?
Does this place pay for
itself? It pay for itself.
Oh.
No, it doesn't. Okay. So how can we make this place bring more revenue to us on the contracts with the arts, with the people and the people that we bring here? This is something that I'd love to see more money staying here, producing more of our own art. But another thing that I'm concerned and might be step in here is I'll wait, I'll come back. Thank you. I will come back. Help me here.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you. Robin.
Yeah, you mentioned the hospital tax. So why is it that we can't use the hospital tax for updating the hospital?
So
maybe I got the question. Maybe I got the understanding wrong. But if there's a hospital tax coming in, why can't the hospital tax be used to update the hospital and elder people? Like my Parkinson's is going to take me out in a couple of years if I'm lucky. And you know what? There's no place to put me. There will be no place to put me. This summer, I was transported to Port St. John by ambulance from Port St. John to get a 15-minute surgery and then transported back by the Port St. John ambulance, and then they had to drive back.
So I'll explain the hospital tax because I did mention that earlier through the Peace River Regional District. So we, in any municipal government, are part of the regional district. Any capital project that's put on through and by the province of British Columbia through Northern Health, the regional district, all of us in the region pay 40% of the capital cost of that project. So when the new hospital is built in Dawson Creek, if it's $350 million, we as taxpayers through our Peace River Regional District hospital tax will pay 40% of the cost of that. And that's the only piece that I'm talking about. The city of Dawson Creek does not have any jurisdiction or any impact on the hospital tax individually. It's through our association with the Peace River Regional District. By legislation, we require to pay for that and fund that.
I'm just saying that, you know, even so far, I think Blair was in Victoria then, that the only thing that's been done with the hospital here is they built a parking lot. That's it. So maybe, and actually, I'm probably not making myself clear, but I did get the question out, and I know that there's a lot of work that goes into making budgets. And anyway, thanks for the question.
Thank you, Robin.
Hello. It's been a decade. You guys have been on this, I'll call it a pacifier as far as the fair share being an operational. How, is the question, does the city of Dawson Creek and this council get off that funding and get it out of operation to be sustainable?
Yeah, so it's probably been longer than that. I think I'm going to go back. I don't know how long. We did the slide back 10 years, but I can't answer exactly how long and what percentage of the Peace River Agreement funding has been used for operating and capital. So that's the next step for us in really this council. And we're going to now, the next phase of the long-term planning is what's the target? What do we need to accomplish? Where is an acceptable level of us having what percentage of the Peace River Agreement money going to operating? What's the time frame that we want to accomplish that in? And then what are the decisions and what are the impacts of how do we reduce that dependency on that? And we haven't had that conversation. We haven't had that long-term discussion. But this year's budget was the first step in that of saying 25% of the Peace River Agreement money going into, or whatever the number was, going into our capital budget was not sustainable. And so that's where, and then, but to get to a balanced budget also, we had to make some significant decisions. But for us, that's the next step in this whole process for us of, and I use the term deliberately, we need to build a strong financial future for all of us as residents in our community of how do we ensure that we get to a position where what we deliver today is sustainable by the taxpayers of the city of Dawson Creek through tax revenue as well as fees and charges, and reduce the dependency of fair share money going into our operating budget. We should have a $15 million capital budget. We have 5.7. So that's the objective that this council are going to have to go to work on now. And we've set that as the number one strategic priority. We can't answer it, but that's the road. Charlie?
Hi, Charlie Hamilton. I have a few questions to ask about the budget. Is the extension of the runway at the Dawson Creek Airport still on the books?
We reconsidered that motion today in council. So we have a capital project of the runway extension. It's been under deliberation for probably 2 years or 3 years. We've got there's always grant money available to do those projects. We allocated 1.4, 1.5 into our reserves last year for the project. We've got the first stage of the engineer's report to do that project. We reconsidered the motion today to delay applying for the grant until we have the completed business case so that we understand the costs of it. We get them locked down a little bit firmer. And so that project will not be moving ahead in 2019's capital budget.
Okay, I think that's the way it should be, but what's the justification for it?
So I think there's 2 or 3 things. The first and foremost is our airport is critical to our community and region for air ambulance and industrial and charters. We need to also enhance and continue to build commercial travel, because as long as we have commercial travel, we are eligible for those federal grants that exist for building infrastructure. So it's multifaceted, Charlie, I think, in terms of how we view the airport. Air ambulance, that medevac service is critical to our residents and not only our community, but our region. Also, we see the huge demand for our airport for charter service and that service. So and it's always transitioning. We've engaged with BC Medical, the air ambulance service, and they're saying that the infrastructure today meets the needs today. But we also know that the insurance and all of the requirements that go into, for air carriers using airports changes and transitions. And we, Council, have made the direction that we want to ensure that that infrastructure exists to allow us to provide that service in the long term. But we want to make sure also we have the business case put together to understand the costs and the implications of moving forward with that project before we do it.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain to me, Blair, what's the justification for that? Because air ambulance can...
That's Dale up there.
Or Dale, I mean, yeah. All right, Blair. Air ambulance can land there right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah? And I understand, I was told a year ago that the commuter planes, the smaller ones that WestJet and Air Canada fly in and out of Fort St. John, they're passenger planes and out of Grand Prairie, the airport can also handle those type of planes. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I don't know the answer to that, Charlie.
Well, what the hell are we doing expanding?
So that's why we're doing the business planning, the business case to determine what the infrastructure is today and needed in the future. And that's why we delayed doing the project.
Okay, so is there going to be a cost revenue assessment done of this project?
That's the whole business case that we're going to put into place, and that's why it was reconsidered today.
Okay, thank you. Now, I hear another thing in the budget that we're planning on cutting the number of RCMP that service the city.
Sure, go ahead. Somebody.
Well, there's...
Thank you, Blair.
All right. Discussion is, in the draft of the budget, there's no reduction in the police services budget. But there is a direction of council to say, look, we have been funding 25 officers within the budget, haven't had 25 officers on the ground for some time. So there has been a decision of council put forward in the draft, and we expect a discussion here this evening to say, look, if we fund for 25 and 20 are on the ground, for example, I'll use round numbers. It varies from anywhere from a number of 8 down to 2 down to whatever. You still can't use that money elsewhere. You have to keep it in your budget. So there was a feeling that if on average we don't have 25 people on the ground, are we going to continue to fund the 25? So a decision was made not to take the money out of the budget, but if next year there's reductions as people move away, retire, whatever, can attrition take its course if we are at a full complement to reduce the number by 3? That's where it's at. So the existing budget as you see it today, Charlie, has no reduction in police services.
Okay, because I understand from statements made to council by the RCMP that they have brought in officers from outside to fulfill that commitment. Is that correct?
At times.
Okay.
Not every time we're down a member is a new member brought in to help out the existing members that are left carrying that workload.
Exactly. Okay. So, well, that's good news, because I was thinking that what the council should be doing is looking to expand the police force, not reduce it. And I'll tell you, thank you. No, and I'll tell you why, is because we now have legalized marijuana, right? Okay, now we're dealing with pot shops, and also, you probably got the same information that I got from CBC and Global and MSN News, that the illegal sale of marijuana has gone up since it was legalized, and the revenue has almost doubled. The reason for that, of course, is because the illegal business they've got no quality control. They don't have to deal with that. They don't have to deal with licensing. They don't have to deal with taxes. Plus, they can sell from anybody on the street from 9 to 90. Good business. So I'm saying to you folks that the police are going to be dealing with a lot more than they're dealing with now. They've got to deal with the illegal marijuana, the legal marijuana, and also they've got to try to find a way and police it of the high drivers, not only the drunk drivers. So I caution you to be very careful about that. Okay?
Charlie, thank you. I just want to be clear. As much as I said there's no reduction in this year's budget with the numbers for the policing, the intent of council's discussion was to look at a reduction of 3 through attrition. So I don't want to think that I've answered to say, oh yeah, we're not going to do it. That's an ultimate decision at the end council makes after listening to the public, engaging the public on our draft budgets. We've had presentations at council speaking about the need to maintain it. We've had different people talk to us. So it's a proposal right now. Council has looked at that, considered that direction as an applicable way to reduce the amount of revenue. And at the end of the day, I can only say from the perspective of one councillor, it's a majority vote at the end of the day for the budget. So although this year there is no reduction in the budget put forward that you're seeing, the intent is to reduce by 3 the amount of members, which would more closely reflect what we've seen on the street. So just, if I made that clear, maybe more muddy.
Yeah, as long as we keep that consideration, because we're compromising a lot of things if we cut those numbers. You know, we're compromising the ability of the RCM to quickly and immediately respond to serious emergencies, right? You know, we're also probably cutting down the number of patrols that they can do in the city. And we're probably not saving any money because, as I know the RCMP, they're pretty conscientious people. And these guys will work as much overtime as they can to provide the services to the city once their numbers are cut. Now, there's not a hell of a lot of savings in that, you know, because overtime adds up pretty quickly, right? So, there's a couple other things too, but
We got a line up behind you, Charlie.
Oh, I'm sorry. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name's Graham Wallace. Okay, the reason, like Charlie, I was actually here about the airport. I know that it's not in the budget for this year now, but I did a little research in regards to the air ambulance, like the mayor brought forth. Out of all the planes they have 2 jets and turboprops. They can all land quite easily at this runway and take off in this runway as it exists. The problem being is they consider this a fair weather runway. By that, we do not have a crosswinds runway. We have not got the ability to build a crosswinds runway. We are not tower orientated. And also, we do not maintain our runway to the standards of Grand Prairie and Fort St. John. So when you have a pilot coming in on a blustery winter day and he flies over the runway at night and he gets it in his mind, he doesn't like it, he's heading for Fort St. John, and you're not going to change that. So basically 95% of the time they will land here. There will be a 5% of the time when they decide, and this is the pilot deciding, that he is going to land in Fort St. John. Okay.
Thank you. And so, as I say, for us, the infrastructure is very important to our community and our region. That's the direction council has taken. The air ambulance service of, I think the average number of air ambulance flights are around 250, 280 a year. We're very, very busy. We're the 4th or 5th busiest airport in northern British Columbia for air ambulance flights. We have had the discussion with the folks at BC Emergency Services. They are coming to do a presentation for us. We understand, we know they've only got 2 jets and the rest are turboprops, and there is no issue with our existing infrastructure. But when you build in the future, you want to make sure that it meets the needs of today and the future. And so that's the analysis that we're going through on the business case to determine whether we add that 1,000 feet or not.
Okay, let's bring it up to date then. When we start talking about this 1,000 more feet of runway, there are some clauses that come with this. One is you got to bring the rest of the runway up to 2019 standards. Okay, so you're going to be dealing with some pitching, you're going to be dealing with lighting, and then you're going to have to start dealing with air pollution. Now, what's going to affect you when now we have an asphalt plant down on the beginning of Snake Pit Road? Is that going to become a major factor under the 219 regulations? And are you releasing data on how much it's going to cost us to re-landscape and put in lights?
So the aspect of subsurface drainage and the lighting is another side component to it, and it's certainly part of whether we extend the runway or not. That's an additional project that's a part of the long-term review of it. So we know that there is funding available for those through the BCAP funding. So we are doing all of that analysis and work.
My worry here is we're building this on the belief that if we build it, they will come.
Yeah, no, that's why Council has made the direction today that we're ensuring that we put the business case together this year to do the analysis before we commit to the project for the future.
Okay, that's all I'm going to say on that.
Thank you.
My other question is in regards to this Peace River allocation. You're saying that from 20 to 35, the government is agreed into another agreement.
Yes.
Have they got any means to get out of it sooner than 35?
So we have the current MOU with and through and on behalf of all of the municipalities in the regional district in northern Northeast BC have signed the agreement that it's been extended to 2035. It's locked at $50 million a year starting in 2020 with a 2% indexing clause. There's an out in 8 years for us if it's not meeting the needs that we felt it should to build infrastructure, that we can raise it. There's another out in 2031 or 2032 for them if the industry isn't progressing. But the point I think that we've made is that it's at the will of the government at any time in a negotiated agreement to end that agreement. And that's our worry, is that if they ever walked from it, any government could do that. We can't walk from property taxation, but an agreement that's a memorandum of understanding, if they walked on us, it's such a significant amount of money for us to all of a sudden transition. You saw the arts, culture, recreation is $8.4 million. That's probably what we're looking at of moving out of that Peace River agreement of our operating. So it would be devastating to our community if we ever lost that Peace River agreement. And that's why we're doing the work we're doing.
And my last little bit here is let's talk the multiplex. Okay, we are losing 1.6 million a year, or basically we're handing Global, the management firm, 1.6 million every year just to keep it running. Okay, we are paying them, what is it, $200,000, $300,000 a year, so they can put their hand out and say, give me $1.6 million. Okay, so why are we going to spend another $1.5 million redoing their parking lot when we're already spending a fortune on it?
Mm-hmm. So the decisions that are made in terms of operating any of our facilities will be made by this council for the future. And if you're talking about $8 million, then you're talking potentially a swimming pool or a multiplex or the curling rink or the arenas. Every service you provide in your community costs a ton of money. And so the event center is one of them.
Well, right now I'm thinking you're going through the planning of how you're going to deal with this excess money that's in operational.
Yes.
Maybe at this moment in time, spend it, not this year. Don't spend it on your $1.5 million doing the parking lot of Encana. Maybe spend that money on streets and avenues that are desperately in need of repavement. You know, hold off until you have made up your mind what you're doing. I will give you a couple suggestions. I don't know, if they're good. One, maybe it's time to walk away from Global Spectrum. Maybe it's time for a new operational company. The other one is maybe instead of having an event center that is 12 months of the year, maybe we should have it as an arena in the winter and run it as an event center in late spring, summer, and early fall. and close down one of the other arenas, which is a major savings.
The problem with moving it to an arena full-time is this, you operate a facility this size, operating costs are about 3 or 4 times what they are for the Memorial Arena as an example. And so that's the problem in terms of trying to operate this as an arena. It's just such a huge facility to operate as an arena, just fixed operating costs, heating, cooling, all of that, right?
And I'll leave you with one last thing here. In Fort St. John, they got their guards at their RCMP detachment are paid roughly $19 an hour. Okay, they were done through the commissionaires program. Your guards here, and this is just for a casual guard, is $29 an hour. Okay, we have a full-time airport manager. Basically, we have some of the highest paid employees in the north. Okay, and I hate to say it, it's getting time to deal with your unions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening. I'm Art Seidel with the representing the Rural Crime Watch. I'm not here to question, but rather a brief presentation. I'm making this presentation on behalf of the 350 plus Rural Crime Watch members and their families I represent. Our organization has been in existence in the South Peace for a better part of 25 years. We are the rural eyes and ears of the RCMP and patrol our rural roads at least 150 days per year, donating our time, gas, traveling in excess of 15,000 kilometers per year. Rural policing, or lack thereof, was becoming a real concern for us. Finally, through the efforts of concerned rural residents, a rural police tax was levied by the Peace River Regional District, and we were able to obtain 4 rural members designated to serve our needs with the increase in break-and-enter thefts, etc. With the members being dispatched out of the local detachment in Dawson Creek, more often than not, our rural members are in fact forced to do municipal enforcement with the perception it has a higher priority. Subsequently, our rural paid RCMP members are not able to patrol as frequently as expected. We are an organization, we as an organization are very disappointed with council and budget staff to even contemplate cutting through attrition 3 municipal RCMP members. The rural perception is our paid RCMP will take up the ever-increasing municipal criminal workload, and we will rarely see RCMP presence in our area yet again. The very presence of a patrol car is a proven deterrent to potential crime. When the criminal element is made aware that there will be less patrols in a rural area, you can be assured rural crime will spike and we will suffer. A second point I would like to bring to your attention is what? By cutting the staff at the local detachment, have you done to the morale within the detachment? Dawson Creek has the 5th highest crime rate per capita in BC, and each member has at least 57 files to deal with, which is also a very high case load. When staff is cut and the workload is redistributed amongst remaining staff, the same level of diligence cannot be humanly expected. This is an organization that must run 24/7, 365 days of the year, with sometimes unreasonably high public expectations with the manpower provided. One DUI can take hours of legal paperwork during an officer's shift, leaving little time for the remaining necessary duties. There doesn't appear to be too much sense in attempting to promote Dawson Creek as a place to live with all sorts of incentives and promises when the residents don't feel safe and are tired of paying high insurance rates due to crime. I urge you to seriously rethink your budget cuts in this area. I can somewhat appreciate it is not an easy task in presenting a budget, and I wouldn't want your job. But remember, you sought to be elected, so your responsibility rests with you now to make educated decisions, not only for your municipal taxpayers, but for us in the rural areas as well, as it affects us greatly. Each one of your budget items being cut severely affects individuals and organizations. The question is, which one being cut starts the domino reaction? Cutting the RCMP contingent in our eyes is where it all starts, for without adequate enforcement, your efforts to promote Dawson Creek within the area are in vain. In closing, several years ago, prior to your severe budget cuts, if I recall correctly, a motion was made in council to increase RCMP contingent by 2 members. That motion was defeated. Hindsight has 20/20 vision. Thank you for your time and attention.
Hi again. A lot of what you guys will hear today is what I spoke to you about this morning, but I really want to empower the community to come up and speak a little bit more about, can you hear me now? Good. To speak about their views on the proposed RCMP position cuts. For those that don't know me, my name is Karina Wingaric. My family's been here for a very long time, and I'm a spouse of a fellow RCMP member here. And I want to address the challenges that we as the spouses of the RCMP notice within the Dawson Creek detachment. And we all agree that this is a budget cut that we can simply not afford. For those that aren't aware, last month another RCMP member has taken his life. And this is close to home when I've known members locally who have had thoughts about committing suicide because they cannot think clearly. There is a direct correlation between trauma and the time that you have off to recuperate. When one trauma after the other that you experience, you are unable to de-stress, debrief, and appropriately recuperate before going back into the field. Psychologically, it is recommended to have time in between traumatic instances to try to debrief, de-stress, and recuperate to decrease burnout. If these things are not done appropriately, it can lead to burnout, which leads to medical conditions and psychological stress, which can lead to depression, anxiety, PTSD, and many other severe conditions. If we give these RCMP officers enough time to recuperate by keeping these positions and having a full force, we are actually giving our force a better leg up into having a healthier lifestyle, which leads to a higher morale, which leads to a safer community. I'm going to share with you quickly some numbers from a CBC article posted in August of 2017 regarding operational stress and PTSD in Mounties. In 2016, there were 249 new long-term disability claims that were filed. 46.9% of those were cited mental health issues. And in 2014, that figure was 41.7%. These numbers are just stating the RCMP percentages. These do not include any city police forces across Canada. I can almost guarantee that if we included the numbers from the city forces outside of the RCMP, that percentage would exceed 50, maybe even 55%. I also believe that since 2016 within the RCMP, those numbers have increased as well. By keeping the numbers at a minimum, we will only be contributing to what the members are already experiencing. The time and energy it takes to investigate a file, and that the majority of the time RCMP are the first to arrive on scene, is a bit crazy. But dead bodies of adult and children, abused men and women, abused children, fatal car accidents, informing families their loved ones have died, watching people die in their arms, and the recent shootings and drug violence. These are just a few of the examples that the Dawson Creek members experience with just the minimums. Could you imagine having to deal with those? Fortunately, the new detachment commander has filled these positions finally, which has made a significant improvement on the detachment morale. And to take away these positions would be a slap in the face to the commander and the members and also the community. If these positions are taken away, what will happen when the city realizes that they need these positions back? Do they understand and know what the process will be and how long it will take? I hope this is something that everyone has considered. Dawson Creek used to be a posting where members wanted to stay, and now it has gained a negative reputation due to being short-staffed. When it comes to the families, it is safe to say that it is normal to take for granted the birthdays, the anniversaries, and the holidays. It is not normal to miss these moments and expect them not to take a toll on relationships with your kids and spouse and maintain a resemblance of a normal life. The families of the members, including myself, appreciate and look forward to our spouses' days off because we know they can be few and far between. The members' children often experience disappointment because their father or mother have to miss out on school presentations, sporting events, and family outings because they are out protecting the community. Can you also imagine how that could affect your family? These members keep their heads held high and do the best that they can with minimal resources already. And I think we all agree that this situation needs to improve. I fully recognize that the police officers choose their profession, and I also recognize that if they don't like it, they can quit. But we firmly believe that being a police officer isn't a job, it is a calling. Being a police officer is recognizing that you will see the worst side of humanity that society has to offer, and you accept that as your normal. In Dawson Creek, we have exhausted members that are trying to protect and serve our community. What we need to realize is that we need to respect and protect them. And this is why the proposed cuts should be reconsidered. And a couple notes I wanted to add. Just going through the slides here today. I understand these are proposed and you're talking about it. But this isn't a question. This is just something to ponder. I don't understand why on February 25th of 2019, on draft 2 of the budget minutes, you have $49,000 towards the fire department to get them new staff lockers and furniture replacement. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else. And you're considering cutting, or you're proposing to cut the positions. And I'm not trying to take a stab at the fire department. That's not what I'm doing. But under protective services, in 2017, there were approximately 9,500 files per year for the police department. There were 450 files approximately per year in 2017 for the fire department. Please consider that. Thank you.
So before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of Treaty 8 territory, and I feel very fortunate to be here to give this presentation today. And I want to thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to address you. My name is Karen Ranaletta, and I'm one of the General Vice Presidents for CUPE-BC. I'm proud to stand here with leadership from CUPE 2403, our President, Corey Longley, and Vice President Stephanie Gowdy, and Chief Shop Steward Tina Henderson. I am here on behalf of our provincial union and the 97,000 members from across British Columbia who stand in support of members of CUPE 2403. Thank you. So in my conversations with members here, it's become very clear, and it's clear here tonight, that people love this community. And it's no different for the members of 2403. They live here, they work here, they serve here, and they love this community. And Mr. Mayor, you alluded to the great public services that exist here in Dawson Creek. And CUPE members deliver those vital public services that make this community a great place to live. And that means a vibrant arts and culture scene, first-class parks and rec facilities and programs, a clean and sustainable city, and official administration of city services. Reducing lawn mowing and parks care won't improve the quality of life for residents, and it won't improve parks use or the safety of those parks. The proposed cuts to the library are extremely disappointing and alarming. Communities thrive when they have a robust public library system. It's one of the last truly democratic community spaces that exist where you don't have to have the expectation that you need to spend money. The services that are provided by library workers are important and devastating for those who need to access social services, whether that's Service Canada with the loss of offices across the country, or other social assistance programs. Not everybody has a computer or internet, and I think that's something that we take for granted, so that it could be devastating as well. And folks need access to computers to do things like print their children's homework. I'd also like to say that this community's contribution to BC's history is important, and the cuts to the archives and the Historical Society curbs those opportunities to share that history. By not having somebody in staff there, did you know there's lots of free grant money to digitize and accession your historical materials? If you don't have somebody there to organize that information, you're missing out on telling your story. And budget cuts aren't just line items on a spreadsheet, but they're actual human beings. And these are the people who live and contribute to Dawson Creek economically and socially. These people are our friends and our neighbors. And I want to acknowledge the impact of some of these proposed cuts that we'll have, because those members are here today. So Melanie Turcott, who's here somewhere, she's right there. Melanie's been with the city for 21 years and is 2 years away from retirement. She's worked in her current role as a sustainability clerk for many years and provides a number of invaluable services to the community. This list of budget cuts identifies the complete elimination of the Sustainability Department and Energy Management Program, despite the fact that many of the services provided by these initiatives are revenue generating or revenue neutral. Jamie Bond, where's Jamie? Jamie's back there. Jamie's one of our library workers. And she'll be losing her position as a library assistant, which is vital to care for her family. She has 4 kids, and it says here in her spare time, and I don't know how you have spare time when you have 4 children, but she's studying to be a library technician. And next up, we've got Gary Levesque. Where's Gary? Gary's over here. Gary's worked for the city for 10 years and is an equipment operator certified on all city equipment. When Gary experienced an accident at work, he was accommodated into a role at City Hall as the engineering department's go-to person for a large variety of work, including pothole patching. Gary is 1 year from retirement. Now, there's probably somebody here that a lot of you know. His name is Lloyd Garvin, and Lloyd has worked... And here's Lloyd here. Lloyd has worked for the city for 29 years and is 4 years away from retirement. He's well known and respected in the community for his hard work, keeping the downtown clean and tidy, pushing his cart year round. A few months ago, Lloyd received the 2018 Reader's Choice Award for Best City Employee, only to be told recently that his job would be reduced as part of the city's budget cuts. Lloyd's wife is very ill and unable to work, and he is very concerned about his family's future should he have to work at reduced hours until retirement. Lloyd, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it's the people of this town. I've worked here for 29 years. I do the best I can possibly do. The downtown, sometimes through the winter months, it slows down a bit, but there's the odd time where there's a truckload of garbage dumped just last week on Monday. There was a bunch of garbage dumped. I just got that cleaned up. I looked down the street or down the alley behind the brass scissors and behind the butcher block. It was completely littered. I got it all cleaned up just before quitting time, and I tried to do my best and to cut me and put me back to where I started from is pretty hard to take.
Thank you, Lloyd. So as you can see, as I said, budget cuts just don't exist on a spreadsheet. They impact people directly. I'm proud to stand here with our members from Local 2403, and so are so many folks in this room. The union is a willing partner and an important partner for the city and is open to sit down with mayor and council to discuss the issues and concerns outlined tonight, and I really hope you take them up on your offer. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jamie Bond. I've lived here for 9 years. As I said, I've got 4 kids, and one of the things I really loved about this city was how many arts programs there were, the amazing library that we have. And I want to address a couple of things. One of them is the information that we've been given through the newspaper, right? So we're told that all of these cuts are coming so that we can extend the airport runway, pave the Encana parking lot, and the road on, was it 96th from 8th to 17th, and that those people are going to have to pay extra for that, right? So, as someone with a family, I can't fly out of this airport. I don't know if anyone else has looked at the prices of the flights out of this airport, but if you are more than one person going more than one way, it's only feasible for companies to fly their oil and gas workers in and out of this town. So seeing that our services are being cut so that we can fly more oil and gas workers in, that's really, really disappointing. The paving of the Encana parking lot. Again, is it because there's really big rigs parked in there all the time? Or did we not do it right the first time? Again, really frustrating. And it's really, really demoralizing to think that, you know, we're looking at, in 10 years, we're going to be paying less and things are going to look good. Well, my kids are going to be grown by then, and they will have missed out on all of the arts, and they will be missing out on the library. You know, we're going to be closing on Sundays if that's how it goes. And again, the library has already cut $50,000 from their budget last year. So this ends up being more than $100,000 that they're cutting. But I have a personal love and passion about the library. So, but yeah, like, the other programs, cutting sustainability. Like, that's the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. To cut the sustainability, isn't that the whole reason for this budget? So to cut the program from the city is kind of, makes me crazy. And I'd actually like to ask council, the recycling is like the curbside recycling. Is that in the sustainability budget or is that in the solid waste budget?
That's in the environmental waste, the solid waste budget.
So we're not going to lose recycling.
No.
Oh, good. That's a thing. So, and this is really uncomfortable for me to address with you guys, but I'm going to do it anyways because I'm up here. This whole raise situation. So from my understanding, and this is again just what I've got out of the paper and everything, my understanding is you afforded yourselves raises because you are now going to be taxed on your entire income as city councilors, right? Like everybody else is already taxed on their entire income, right? So, like, Mayor Bumstead, your wage was, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was gonna
say, your wage, I think it was at $61,000, right?
Yes.
That's a pretty reasonable wage. So to increase it another $10,000, which would, you know, be the exact amount or thereabouts to keep the library open on Sundays, would, like, it's really, it's in really almost bad taste for you guys to be like, we're going to cut your arts and we're going to cut your libraries and we're going to stop mowing the grass maybe like once every week or whatever. But we're going to, like, I believe in raises. I think that's really great. Everyone deserves raises, but not at the expense of everybody else's services. So, thank you very much.
I'm back. They spoke already about quite a bit of things that I was going to speak. I didn't know about your wage. How many of you have 2 jobs? About the increase in wage, about the extension on a runway. What if? Many years ago, studies have been done about this runway, the angle of the Briar Ridge. They don't like landing here. To think that the big planes are going to land here is to think the same way that planes are going to leave the airport in Vancouver, Richmond, and land in Burnaby. And they are going to land also in Abbotsford. They don't do that. That's a ton of gas they are burning to take off. This is only 1 hour. 1 hour drive there, 1 hour there, and you are going to sacrifice our arts. You are going to sacrifice our library I can pronounce the word. There you go. To sustain us, our community. And I'm watching you, okay? I'm really watching. Before I didn't care because my husband worked and I couldn't speak. Now I can. So abort your raises abort the extension of that runway and keep Lloyd and the other employees. That's all I have to say. And I'll be a pain on your ass.
Hi, I'm David Griffith. I just more of something to contemplate about this whole airplane thing. I think there's a point in time where the Dawson Creek has to kind of really evaluate it as a whole, because we've been dumping a lot of money into it for a long time. And this particular time, there's a lot of options available, especially with the collapse of the Greyhound network, that maybe the city of Dawson Creek should partner with the federal government, start a 3 or 2 time daily trip to Grand Prairie and Fort St. John, buy the old building, close our airport, let the federal government take the land back and run it as an emergency airport. You know, the difference of an airplane coming in from Vancouver to get medevaced, it's an hour flight anyways. You leave right away on an ambulance. Maybe time is now to give up on the airport instead of spending another $1.5 million on it. You take that $1.5 million, you buy a few buses, you get a big grant from the federal government to reopen these transit lines. Not only are you helping the community, you're helping the federal government, you're cutting your costs, and whatever the land that's not federally owned for the airport, you sell it as high dense industrial lots. The one thing that Dawson Creek is heavily missing out on in the oil and gas industry is large industrial lots. There's a chance that you could turn in large areas of that area into large industrial lots. I know you can't take it all because part of the airport area is federally owned, but this is something to maybe consider instead of spending money on something that's floundering. And it's been floundering for as long as I remember. I've lived here for 35 years now, and I've flown out of Dawson Creek Airport once, and that's when I didn't pay for my ticket. So this is just something to consider since you're doing the research on it. You're spending all these people doing the proposed, maybe add some new features to it. Step away from just the narrow vision of airport or no airport or make more money in the airport and think a little bit outside the box. Just an idea to, maybe save $1 million a year, get a little more tax revenue, and still keep the employees. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify 2 points. One, none of the land out there is owned by the federal government. It's all owned by the city of Dawson Creek. And 2, we're the 4th or 5th busiest airport in northern British Columbia for air ambulance service. Air ambulance service is a critical portion, a critical piece of services to our residents in the region. So that's why it's under consideration.
But all I'm saying is the flight from anywhere that you're going to fly to in a medevac is an hour flight.
So
That's
sometimes
the same drive it is to Fort St. John.
you can also look at the Peace River Hill and how many times it's closed in the wintertime because of crashes and accidents. And if it's your family that wants to get flown out of here, that's got a premature baby just born or in critical condition, they're trying to get to Vancouver. I'll tell you what, that airport's the most critical piece of infrastructure in our community.
Just as another added note, I understand that. I'm just saying added to consideration because there is also the STARS ambulance that can fly you to the airport. There's a million options. I'm not saying this is the end all be all and this is the way it has to be. You guys are looking for options and considerations. Maybe this is an option. I'm not saying close the airport down entirely.
No, I think that's what you said.
Yeah.
Close it down.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it closed down because it's a huge expense. And yes, there are times when the ambulance has to come in here. I won't deny that. And you have to care about these people. But there may be other options that you can mitigate these issues that come up. Maybe there is a way you can have a temporary landing during the winter and just have a section of road that you can close for emergency landings. It's not that's the end of flights into Dawson Creek, but I'm just saying maybe you can mitigate it. Instead of being a commercial airport, you can just be an emergency airport. You can have 1 staff member there to plow the road instead of 5. You use that land around it and you make a dense industrial and then you pay for that with your tax revenue. I'm not saying you have to close it. I'm just saying maybe we should consider this as an option.
Thank you.
Your Worship, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just on the airport, because I know it's come up a few times. So I have to get this out of my head and off my chest, I guess. The airport is very valuable to our community. Personally, one of my children would not be here today if we didn't have air ambulance. So that's how important it is personally to me, but it's important to this community. But I think what everybody maybe hasn't heard or we have not articulated very well, that today council said we are going to pull back on the runway extension until the full report is complete and brought back to us. So we have pulled it out. We recognize that we need to be proactive. We also recognize that there is ability for some of the work that needs to be done that will be covered 100% by grants. That is not going to come out of your pocket in this budget. So we need to be proactive, and that airport is like a highway for people in the north that live in this area and do need it and do utilize it. So I want to be very clear that council today made that decision, and I am very proactive. I always have been. If you voted for me or if you didn't, you know I'm proactive about our airport. And I know that the staff that's out there and our manager do a really great job on maintaining it, having it open, and being prepared for flights that are coming in, whether it be oil and gas workers, whether it be a passenger flight, or whether it be our ambulance. But at this point in time, council, we're not going to do anything until we have the full report and we understand the full cost of what it will take to then extend the runway. So have I articulated that better? Because I want everyone to understand that we've pulled it off of the plan until we have that full report. The other thing, and I know, and my colleagues are going to probably crush me for this later, but I'm going to do it anyways because that's just who I am. The mayor has to speak on behalf of all of council and how they voted as a majority. I want you to understand that some of these decisions that were made weren't done by everybody voting yes. So if you look at the minutes, you'll know where I was very opposed. And I said on the phone, because I had to phone in, I was strongly opposed to losing the employees and making those cuts. I know we have to balance the budget. I know we're going to have to sharpen the pencil. And it might mean coming to you to say, we need to look at maybe BC Transit Service, or maybe we need to look at user fees. Maybe we need to look at how our user groups or arts and culture are using our facilities. Maybe those wants need to be less in order to succeed in our needs. But I think the people we have working for our city are valuable. And I will tell you this, however it's decided, and I'm going to continue on my vote being that, you will never hear me say that we should cut our emergency services, whether it be the police department, the fire department, or ambulance. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alan Watson. Good to see you back, Blair. I stand here as a rural resident. I stand here as a member of the Rural Crime Watch. And I also stand here as a past director of the Peace River Regional District that pushed really hard to get funding for 4 rural police officers. What's happened to them? I think Art gave pretty good background, and others did as well, as what's happened. The frustration out there in trying to get RCMP response to deal with anything in the country, it's really frustrating. I don't think that, I guess my question is really simply this. I don't care how you color it, how you call it, or whatever. To cut the RCMP is just totally unacceptable. Now, you're not calling it a direct cut. You're calling it through attrition, et cetera, you're going to reduce the RCMP force. It's totally unacceptable. So my question to you is, as a rural taxpayer, why should I continue to fund 4 rural police officers if through your attrition cuts, I'm going to see less and less of them out there in the country because we don't see them often enough now. So why should we keep on funding for rural police officers? That's my question.
Thank you, Alan. So the allocation of members for our detachment, I want to explain that. And honestly, the allocation, the funding for the 4 rural members, we fund 25, rural funds for, there's 5, I think, 5 traffic, there's other provincially funded positions. And so to me, the aspect of how we are making our decision and the direction council have given with respect to the 25 members is directly at and focused on those 25, and the Prince George subdivision and the detachment commander is responsible for the operations of that detachment with municipal traffic, highway traffic, all of those other things and the members. So I can't answer that question. I don't think council can answer that question in terms of for you, how and what you as a rural taxpayer would do with those or that rural funding. I appreciate the frustration, but our view is the direction council is taking is with respect to our complement of 25 and moving it to a reduction to 22.
Yeah, I would just like to point out with the air ambulance, you know, without the air ambulance services here, we're wiping out the golden hour. And I've been in that position where they've had to fly me to Vancouver and they've had to fly me to Edmonton. And so would I want to go there by road? No. And the bus service or the Greyhound service, you can't do anything about. But you know, it's really bloody sad when the Horgan bus won't run into Alberta and the provincial Alberta bus will not run into BC. Because I don't know about you, but I can't fly on my pension. That's it.
Thank you, Robin.
Hello, Dale, Council. So my question was, where does climate change fit in this budget, for this year's budget?
In regards to
us contributing to the problem and like how we can be part of the solution instead of the problem?
Sorry, you're asking, are we initiating any additional program services that would impact our overall footprint in terms of?
Yeah, definitely. Like where does climate change fall in this year's budget?
We haven't had, I don't think we've had any discussion at all that I can think of in regards to any services, products, or changes to the city budget that would have an impact on our footprint.
Okay, why is that?
Are
Council?
you thinking we should cut some more?
Oh, okay. No. Well, okay, so Canada, federally, like we're committed to lowering our CO2 emissions. Why can't we be municipal leaders in that field? Why can't we contribute?
And I'll just speak from history here. I think the city has been a leader in that field and done quite a bit over the years.
So we're just going to stop doing...
I'm not sure if you heard the mayor. Nothing has changed in that situation as far as the sustainability, Claire. So for the people that are questioning this, and it is interesting sitting up here, there's a budget. There's a financial issue in the city of Dawson Creek, and challenge in the city of Dawson Creek. Folks, there is. It can't continue the way it's going. This isn't people up here wanting to cut services or make these changes, but if they don't, if we're talking about our environment, or the best environment is a strong family, a strong community, none of that'll be possible. Like you elect us. We don't expect people to agree with every decision. This is a draft budget. We're being engaged here by the public. But I can't sit here and tell you that we are not in a financial challenging position as the city of Dawson Creek. We have lived beyond our means for a long, long time. Ladies and gentlemen, for a long time. That's the bottom line.
I just want to say, I don't really know much about the fair agreement or whatever, but 15 million for how much industry we have up here seems like fairly small. Like I feel like the industry should be contributing more to our community for like all the pollution and all the extra people and traffic and strain and services we put up with. Is there...
So certainly we renegotiated the Peace River Agreement 3 years ago and got it extended from where it was going to expire in 2020 to 2035. It's bringing 17 million is coming into our community in property taxation, and 15 is coming from the province in additional revenue to us. So for us, it's the allocation of what's going into the budget that we're operating this city. 8.5 million for recreation, arts, culture, and in our community. That's a ton of money. And so, as Blair said and as council have said, we need to change that allocation, and it's a fiscal challenge that we have in front of us. And this council, so you go back to October, every one of these people who were, all of us who were seeking re-election, talked about the fiscal challenges that the city had, and that was going to be the #1 priority. That's what these people got elected on. And so what we're moving forward with is a future direction of ensuring we have that solid financial future. Listen, when we had council the other day and we had the lady from, and every one of you, every one of these employees that are impacted are all friends or acquaintances of ours that we've lived here all our lives, almost all of us. So this isn't an easy thing that you sit here and you make these changes. The lady from the Kiwanis band saying $5,000 you're cutting out of our budget is $20,000. That hurts. Like, I'm thinking about, do I cut a check for her? This hurts us personally because we're members of this community. It's where we live. This is where we raised our families. But this other piece of it is to build a strong financial future for our community requires us to really make some tough decisions, financial decisions. And that's what we're attempting to do. And by majority, that's what democracy is, and we make the decisions and move forward on that basis. Honestly, none of it's easy. Not one bit of this is easy. Not one bit of this doesn't hurt us. You see Lloyd doing his job diligently, passionately, every day in our downtown streets, caring about what he's doing. That all makes a difference to us. It isn't easy. This is our family. Or you elect us to make those decisions. That's what we have to do. So next.
Hello, my name's Danae Renouf. I am the archivist for the South Peace Historical Society. I moved up to Dawson Creek for this position, and I'm not speaking here today as trying to save my job or whatever. I actually have another job offer or a job interview, so that would involve me moving to a different community, which means you lose a member of your community. What I'm here today to ask is, everyone said that the city is in financial trouble. We accept that the city is in financial trouble. However, given that the city is in financial trouble, the decision of the council to give themselves a raise seems a little off. How many people could keep their jobs to retirement if the city council doesn't get their raise? You have people who are 1, 2, 4 years away from retirement. You have 15 years to adjust the budget. Can't you give those people the time they need to retire at the very least? Just a thought, just a question. How does the city council justify their raise at the expense of other people's jobs?
Sure. So do you want to yell at me? That why you're here? You want to yell at me? No, him. I absolutely want to explain the process we went through. 2 years ago, federal government were changing the tax rules as it applies to elected officials. It used to be 1/3 of what we received in remuneration was tax-free. We get asked to go to a ton of stuff, and you're contributing to a ton of stuff. And so as a result of that contributions you're making to community groups, when I go to the Elks Dinner, I'm buying a $100 pin from the Grand Exalted Ruler. When I'm going to the Boy Scouts on Saturday to raise $400 or $500, and I'm giving a donation for $100. When I go to the South Peace Hospice Society dinner Saturday night, I'm giving $50, $100. It's all coming out of my pocket. I get asked to go to a lot of stuff. Council get asked to go to a lot of stuff. So 1/3. So let me explain. You asked me to explain, I'm explaining. So 1/3 of the tax that we get charged was going to be removed. So the full remuneration policy that we have, that we get paid for to do these jobs, 1/3 of it was tax-free. So in 2019, that tax rules changed by the federal government. So in 2017, we said we want to appoint a committee of community representatives to look at the council remuneration policy. So we put a policy, we put a structure in place. We got a group of community people, business people. We had members of the service groups, the Rotary Club, and we formed a committee to look at the council remuneration policy. How should it be handled for how people are paid to do this job? And your policy should always be aimed at directing to get an outcome. So you want to have an outcome that allows you to have people who are willing to do this job and be paid to do it, and allow your community to devise the policy of what that should look like. So that's what we did in 2017. That committee came back with a recommendation to council in 2018 with the recommendation for the council remuneration policy, and that's what was adopted. That's how it was done. This council did not come up with the guidelines or the policy of with which we are paid. We put it out into our community, to community people, business people, and as I say, we had members of the Rotary Club, service groups, just to be able to make sure we had a broad spectrum of our residents giving that input into the community for their policy of remuneration. People are single moms, and people who they should be adequately compensated to do the job you elect them to do. And you want the policy to be able to attract people who can do the job and not at the expense of their own financial situation. That's what your policy should do, in my view.
Hello, my name is David Radigan. My wife and I moved up here in 2017 with our young child. We really like Dawson Creek, so I just want to thank you guys for opening this up today. I realize that it is very hard. I appreciate Mayor Bumstead that you're expressing empathy and that there are real people involved in the logistical decisions you guys have to make. I wanted to comment on the proposed cuts to police staff specifically, but I would bring up, you did mention when you were going through all the stats and all of the income that new homes are 100% income from the previous years for tax. Is that correct? Just to clarify.
Sure. So every year, if you have any new construction that takes place, that new assessment is all new revenue that come into that's what that was breaking.
Right. So if I understand that right, then to be creative, instead of just focusing on cutting things, then we should increase as a town. Like I moved from Surrey. When I grew up in Surrey, it was a very rural-ish town growing up, and it's become one of the fastest growing cities in Canada. I'm not suggesting that Dawson Creek is going to be Surrey. However, there is a little bit of economic prospect of Dawson Creek, that there's a pipeline being built to ship our product out to the coast, that we have LNG. There's things on the horizon. So what I would like to say is that as a young family man, I'm moving to this community thinking this is going to be a safe community. However, our community is ranked 16th in Canada for the highest crime rates. So if we reduce policing, are we going for number one? And I'm not here to grind your guys' gears or put people through the ringer, except to comment that and it makes sense. If you see that there's 3 spaces available that aren't being filled, why are we spending that money anyways? And you're trying to be fiscally responsible, but it's as though you would build a really nice house and put nice things in your house, and then you take all the locks off the door. And this town is the town where there's hardworking men that budget for their truck to get stolen, for their light bars to get cut off, because you just can't stop it. It happens. And crime flows where there's the path of least resistance. So I agree with Mr. Hamilton that we should increase the policing, not reduce it. And I get, we don't have, you're right, Mr. Leckstrom, we do have financial problems. But I think rather than focusing on cutting so much, we need to get more creative with maybe increasing income. And I get it, that's a hard task. That's why you're council and I'm not. But I would like to comment that my wife and I and many of our friends, these are the comments that we feel, is that don't reduce the policing, don't make us less safe as a community. Make this a desirable place for people to build houses, to invest, to put down roots, to pay taxes so that we can have nice things. Thank you.
Hello there, Mayor Bumstead and Council. Gordon Curry here. Most of you know me. My question is regarding economic development. I was just looking through the numbers here, and I don't see a whole lot of expenditures or budget for economic development. Now, I know the mayor is out promoting, as are all the council, and doing what they can. And a number of years ago, we had a budget for economic development. We have somebody that was taking the phone calls and putting the packages together and that sort of thing. So I guess my question would be real quick here is, are you folks budgeting for economic development? Because we are talking 5-10 years out now with some of our funding. Certainly over that period of time, there might be some opportunity to bring some more business into town. We keep talking about cutting and budgets and stuff, but what about raising the revenues? What can we do, and is there any money planned for that?
Okay. Hello. Thank you, Gord. So I'll speak to your point, I guess. Dale's been doing most of the heavy lifting here tonight, and then I'll speak more generally to some of the feedback we've got tonight on my own behalf. So with respect to the economic development piece, the mayor does serve as in part of his capacity as the mayor as an economic development officer. He gets a budget for that. And I reiterate, with respect to the 2019 budget, there is a long-term component of this. And without getting into too much detail, we have identified revenue and economic growth opportunities above and beyond that. So without, I don't want to jump the gun on that because it doesn't have the assent of council to go ahead with, and doing that would just not, don't want to overpromise and underdeliver in that respect. I'll say for myself, with respect to some of the feedback we've got here tonight, I've been in this job for about 4 months now, and it's been a heck of a ride. To Councillor Ekstrom's point, I was in office for about a week when we received the preliminary financials, and it was apparent that there is an issue. With respect to the existing proposals for service cuts, realistically, we as a city can provide whatever services you want at whatever level you'd like them provided, as long as we're willing to pay for them. And the issue we're running into is that we have not been paying the true cost of operating this city for the last 15 to 20 years. That cost has been offloaded in part onto our money being pulled from the PRA that was intended for capital and out of reserves. So the reality of the situation is, if we don't either find cuts or raise revenue, we are going to be in a situation where we're passing along tens of millions of dollars in unfunded liabilities onto our children in the form of decrepit infrastructure. That is not a legacy I care to own a piece of. Now, I'm absolutely open to any suggestions anyone has about this, but the reality of the situation is, to Councillor Lexon's point, to the mayor's point, to where we're headed generally as a council, we can't continue to do what we've been doing. It isn't sustainable, and as much as I appreciate cultural sustainability and environmental sustainability, if you don't have financial sustainability, you don't get to keep those other things. You're just renting them.
Gordon, I will just speak very quickly, Gordon, to the tourism. And so the event and sport tourism strategy is a real focus for us in terms of building. We signed a 5-year agreement with Hockey Canada. We're going to put on 4 or 5 major events here at the Canada Event Centre over the next 5 years. We had the women's national team here in September. We're going to have the World Junior A Challenge. When we did the U17 tournament twice, the first year in 2015, we did the economic impact analysis on that event for Dawson Creek, Fort St. John, and the region and the province. It was $6 million. Anytime we can attract people into the community to spend their money for different events, that adds economic benefits to our community. We're really locked into that in terms of seeing the benefits of that. We've got a number of announcements coming that we've made, and we've got a few more coming that'll be, I think, very beneficial. And we're really working hard on that because we see the benefits of event and sport tourism as another opportunity of diversifying the economy of the community. Louisiana Pacific's, they're just opening up. They've just started their Smart Side facility. They've had another 50 or 60 direct jobs plus the additional jobs in the bush. That facility is now going from 130, 140 people up to 200. So that's a real great opportunity that's created in our community, and to us that's the diversification of the community, the diversity of the economy that makes us so strong, and the event and sport tourism strategy is just one component of that. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Joan. I'm another proud spouse of one of the members here in Dawson Creek. I don't really have I don't really need a response. I don't really have a question, but I have a point of view. My husband this is my husband's 3rd posting. His first was in Quesnel, BC, and the other one was in Nunavut, where we met. We were there for 2.5 years. It was a flying community. He was working every day, day and night. He was getting called 3 in the morning. Lot of on-call. The Nunavut is a northern posting, and it's considered a golden ticket to come anywhere in Canada, essentially. We, as a family, chose Dawson Creek because we heard that it was a great place, okay, to build a family. So we did the research and we chose here. As a family now, if you cut those 3 members and he has to work longer hours, you can believe as a wife, I'm going to say, I want the next place. And if you want to have those positions filled all of the time and you're saying they're not being filled, why? It's because, you know, you need to have people that want to come here. And if you reduce those people, you're not going to get members wanting to come here. Another thing actually that my husband has been chatting about with me is, have you looked at other communities as ways to keep like increasing the police budget? You don't need to invent the wheel. We can look at what other communities are doing and adapt to think how things are done in other communities in order to increase those budgets specifically for policing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Joy Kelly Brad. I've lived in Dawson Creek 38 years, worked here. I'm speaking on a few points. Number one, the airport, we need it. Several of my own family members over the years have survived because of the medevacs. We need our airport. As far as RCMP, it's in the newspapers all the time. Our crime rate is increased. We need our citizens to feel safe. On the other side, the arts, the beautification, keeping our city clean, our parks and rec, it may seem like smaller amounts compared to $1.649 million to the Encana Event Center with no fees and charges received. So the smaller amounts that you feel you can take from the arts and the beautification and the cleaning of our city, it just doesn't add up in my mind. We have huge events here. I've been to them. I enjoy them like other citizens of our community. But where's the revenue for the city? It helps all the businesses which pay taxes. It does, like you said, with the Hockey Canada that comes, all the contracts you signed. Where's the benefit for our city, for our taxpayers, so you don't have to cut the arts, the beautification, keeping our city clean, the parks, the things that keep families in Dawson Creek. That's what I like to say.
So Joy, thank you. The net subsidy to and for the Encana Event Center, 1.6 million. The total operating budget for the event center is probably in the $4 or $5 million range, but that's what the total budget is. But when you take all of the revenues from the events, then that gets you down. And anything that once we get into that range that they make a profit on, then that reduces the subsidy that the city pays for it. In 2019, it's $1.6 million for our net subsidy that we would pay to the event center.
Because I'm president of the Potters Guild as well.
Yes.
And I know we pay rent
Yeah.
to the to the Calvin Crook Center. We do pay rent twice a year. So it's...
Yeah, that number is just the pure net subsidy from what the city taxpayers would pay after all of the other fees come in there.
It's still a huge
Sure.
amount
Yeah,
compared
absolutely.
to what you're saving, those little bits, but those little bits may seem small to the council, but they're impacting lives hugely.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I want.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for the work. I don't have a problem with Amy getting her money, but I have a problem with people that have 2 jobs, 2 pensions, 3 pensions, whatever, and are using our money and increasing their wages in a time of cutbacks. But thank you very much.
This on? All right. Thank you for that. So I've changed my jobs. I work from home now and I make a little less than I did my past term. But I want you to understand, I had 2 jobs, I still do. I'm now self-employed at home. It's contract work with soccer. So soccer registration for your youth if you haven't done that yet. But in my past job in my last term, I used all of my holidays, all of them, to do stuff for the city. My family did not take holidays. If I had to leave for an event during the day, I would change my lunch hour. And in the end, it actually cost me money to sit here to represent all of you. However, I am quite happy. I believe it's around $5,000, the raise I got this term. My take home is an additional roughly $88, and I would gladly give that money back if it meant that we could change these changes that are being proposed. So honestly, if you know, and it affects everyone differently, but I want you to understand that just because someone has 2 jobs does not mean they're rolling in it. Because when I first got elected, you were paying me about $17,000, and every single cent that I got from my other job subsidized me to be an elected official, and my family went with less. So I'm not saying I deserve to make big dollars. I asked for this job. I work for all of you. It's your money. But I will say today, if you want the $5,000 wage increase I got just for this year, I will gladly give it back to you, and I will gladly not take one next year. But I will tell you, it equates to $88 more a month.
So yeah, I'm one of the people with 2 jobs. I take vacation days to go to council meetings and other events. I'm going to be out of vacation at the end of this month, and then I'm into unpaid days off in order to attend council. I don't, similar to Shaylee, I ran for this. I knew it was into it. My employer has been very gracious in accommodating me to do that. But the notion that there's no, you know, like I said, I'm not rolling in it. But yeah, the notion that I have 2 jobs, so I don't need the other one, or I don't need to be paid for this one, is not realistic. And as to the mayor's point earlier, and he's taken a lot of this on the chin tonight as the chair of our board, but if you want your community run by people who don't need the money, there are implications to the kinds of decisions they make and how they're going to represent you. The old advertising term, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, comes to mind. So yeah, I'm one of the people with 2 jobs. I'm proud to do this work. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to serve, but it's not a cakewalk by any means. If this last 4 months is any indication, and looking forward to the next 3.5 years, it's, yeah.
Monica at the back there, and I see you pointing at me. Just for clarification, hopefully you're not the one, but I worked in the provincial government for 12 years. I earned a pension. I would suggest that 95% of the people here think I get that pension. And I do, at 65 years old. I don't get it today. I don't get it after 4 years like many people think. And I have people say, my God, it must be great you've got this pension. I said, God, I'm looking forward to it. But I'm not 65 yet. I may look it to some people, but I'm not there yet. So I want to make that clear. So when you talk about pensions and you point at me, I'm going to make sure there's a full understanding here that the pension that people think that provincial politicians get is very similar to the BC government workers' pension, and I support that.
So I want to go back to I really want to go back to the point about your elected officials. Your policy of what and how you pay them should be a policy that gets you a wide, diverse group of people to represent your community. And that's what we have, thank goodness. We got young people from our community that have stepped up and got elected, representing our community, so that we're not all exactly the same old retired guys that are here from our community. We represent the entire community, and your policy of how you pay people should drive that, should allow people to come and serve. I don't care how much money I get paid as the mayor. That's not why I'm here. I'm born and raised here. I've got 64 years in this community. I care about this community. That's why I'm the mayor. You talk about go out and do something. I could go out and do something. My wife says to me all the time, why don't you go do something you get paid for if you're going to work this hard? I don't do it for that. I do it because I love this community. This is why I do it, and that's why we all do it. I don't do it for the dough. Do it because we love this community, and this community is people. It's not a piece of paper in somebody's desk drawer. So anyway, remuneration should drive where you get people coming here that care about your community, and I think you guys, in all honesty, have done a great job of electing people in this community over the years.
Hello, my name is Leah Yaku. I've lived in the Dawson Creek area for basically my entire life. I currently actually live on the Alberta side of the border, but I do have property that I pay taxes for in the regional district, and I spend a lot of my time in Dawson. I do a lot of volunteering here. And your crime rate affects me personally. I'm a single mom. I had my whole purse stolen recently. And I understand budgeting. I think probably every person in this room understands budgeting. I don't have all the money I would like to be able to do things with, same as Dawson Creek does not. But I need to focus on what's most important, and government's job is to keep their people safe. Their job is law enforcement. That is government's job. So yeah, I understand budgeting. It was not in my budget to have to replace everything that was in my purse. I can't afford to do it. The police member that is working on my file, he, to my knowledge, has not had time to look at the videos of who was using my credit card, because he's busy working on all his other files. So it's possible that this crime may never get solved because those videos are overwritten by the time he gets to them. So I want to bring my kids to a place that's safe. I think everybody in this town wants to be a place that's safe. I have family that is looking to move places. I say, hey, why don't you come up here? There is a lot of work up here. There is a lot of work up here. But you're also in McLean's, so that's kind of a turnoff. Anyway, I would just like to say your very, very, very most important thing, I think, on your budget is your RCMP members. They need to be able, and from what I understand, speaking to the RCMP members, and I could be wrong, the budget cuts that were going to be made were three places that they have been trying to fill for a very long time, but not a lot of people want to come here. So we finally got these 3 people here, and now you're going to cut their positions. We need these 3 people. We need more than these 3 people. And I'd just like to add for revenue stuff, came here late, so maybe somebody said this already, I don't know, and I may be speaking something completely bizarre, but as a taxpayer in the regional district, I am not opposed to paying some more taxes so that we can have some RCMP members responding.
Thank you, Linda. Leah?
I'm Stu Flynn from Dawson Creek, and I had to wait till the last. I just wonder if the term hot seat comes to your mind. Hot seat.
Stu, that's why we get here. We're here because we want to be here.
I know.
Right? So this is...
You're not getting away. Yeah. I had to do that anyway. Anyway, I hear, you know what, a lot of people have stood up here and voiced their opinion. And I feel because we live in Canada, that's a right. They should damn well do that. I'm pleased that you are willing to sit up there, all of you, and listen. There's a couple of things, if I can remember them long enough before I'm talking. There's a couple of things I'd like to say. First of all, I agree with Art Seidel and Alan Watson because they're on the Crime Watch. There are other people here that are involved in the Crime Watch. I said this at one other council meeting or one of these meetings here in this building. If you had 400 RCMP officers in the city of Dawson Creek, you sure as hell will never stop the crime. And that is because our federal government, in their lack of wisdoms, have made the laws so poor that there is no penalty for anybody that breaks the guy's door down or steals the other guy's truck or those kind of things. There's no penalty until you make the people responsible for their actions. Nothing is going to happen. I understand the people here saying that they need more RCMP officers. Okay, and I hear Blair tell us we have the money, we just don't have them. Another thing too, the young lad stood up here and he mentioned pollution. Of course, do you know, and I happened to actually search this out on the internet, but Canada is totally responsible for 1.5% of the world's pollution. What the hell are we doing with a tax? What are we doing with another flippin' tax for our pollution? Because we don't create it. It's the other part. We don't create it. So no. And anyway, another thing too. I'm going to just run this by. I want to ask you gentlemen, when you were to go home after your hard day's work at the office and your floors weren't cleaned and there cookie crumbs all over the floor and in the Chesterfield and all that kind of thing, how happy would you be with your wife because her vacuum cleaner didn't work? Now I'm going to talk about our guy that works for the city. He's as dedicated as all of you are. He cleans the streets, just like your wife takes a vacuum cleaner and cleans your house to make you happy. I would be pretty happy to keep this guy on staff because he cleans our streets. And I'm pretty damn happy that he does it because he keeps the cigarette butts cleaned up and he keeps the McDonald's garbage cans picked up because somebody's too damn lazy to take it and put it in the garbage can over there. He leaves it in his car And then when his wife isn't looking, he kicks it out the door and shut the door quickly, you know. We've all done it at one time or another. Anyway, and you know, another thing too, just so as I would say, I wouldn't do your job for all the damn money in the world. You guys stay at it. You're doing good.
Thank you, Stu. So we're just after 9 o'clock, and certainly council are happy to stay here and ask or answer any questions that you may have, but we've been 2 hours and a little over, and sincerely we want to let you know how much we appreciate you coming out tonight and giving us your input, your feedback, your suggestions on how we can provide the services to you. So thank you all for coming out tonight.